the time available to come and join us. And today we have Lyle Petersen joining us as our speaker. Lyle is one of our senior consultants in the data and analytics space with quite an extensive career in the software development industry. And today Lyle's going to be talking around how to kickstart your career in the software development space and how to be flexible in terms of your journey in that space. Lyle, thank you so much for making the time available today to join us and speak to our audience. I know it's going to be another informative session, and for our audience, please, as we're progressing through the talk today, if you have any questions, please raise those in the chat window. I will then moderate those and raise those with Lyle at the end of the session today. Again, we will be recording the session and make it available online post the session. So we're looking forward to it. Lyle, I'll hand across to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody for participating today. And I'm sure you're all excited about learning about kickstarting your software development career. So this is for a veteran software developer, could be for someone thinking about software development or someone just wanting to transition into the role. So I'm going to look at tools and techniques to position yourself. So we've all come back from this pandemic. We all see the cracks recede. We're coming back to some form of normality. And we also see the impacts on our daily lives, impacts in the way we work, impacts in the way we communicate with each other, and impacts in the services that we receive. So we see software all around us, and we see this increase in digitization. It's helping us collaborate, it's helping us provide services, and it's helping us make decisions. So it's a very exciting time. We see some mega trends as well, things like reworking, this intense collaboration in organizations where a variety of skill sets come together to add value where and when it is needed. So we see this trend and it will impact us more and more in the future. We hear about this term called digital dexterity. So that's a constant upskilling and keeping up to date with the latest trends. So we have things like AI, data, and digital capabilities. They're almost like entities in our boardrooms or invisible members of our teams. And we have to connect and interface with these technologies. And we continuously have to stay up to date. Some are even saying it may be more important than tenure and experience in the future. We see purpose and passion becoming important. I'm sure the pandemic has made you think about quality of life, think about work-life balance. And we see with millennials and Gen Zs, they're more concerned about passion and purpose and their careers aligned to these values. There's also a converging of business and people boundaries. The convergence between the blurring of boundaries between work and personal life, the blurring of boundaries between various teams we interact with, and the strengthening of things like conversational tools, project management tools, and remote communication tools. So these are socio-technological trends that will likely impact us now and in the future. But at the center of it all is this maestro, this wizard, this software developer will always be important, especially with large-scale application development. And this person has a variety of skills. It can be technical skills, the ability to program, using different languages, can be soft competencies and soft skills. For instance, the ability to lead, communicate, work with certain paradigms like Agile. So this individual has a broad range of skills and a broad range of thinking abilities. And it may sound like one of these unicorn roles, but it's with purpose, with time, you can master the role and you can set a direction for yourself. Now, on the shores of our continent, in Africa itself, we can see the demand for software developers. And surprisingly, many are self-trained, about 31%, and many are trained through online courses. This is kind of an indication that is a demand for developers. It's also an indication that university training does not necessarily keep up to date with the latest trends. So there's a need to meet these gaps, and there's a need to mentor and train individuals. So things like on-the-job training, mentorship is very important on our continent. Now we have a variety of skills. Each one of us has skills, traits, and abilities, and that's what I want to focus on today. your unique traits, your unique skills, and how you can build on these skills, how you can be digitally dexterous, how you can adapt to a changing market and still position yourself for change, how you can look at a variety of opportunities, and how you can become the software developer you want to be and purpose yourself. So that's what we're going to look at today. And we call this being future fit. So the first question you want to ask is, what do I like? And that is a question of purpose and passion. Now, if you enjoy software development, if you have an enjoyment for the idea of creativity and analytical thinking that comes with it, the ability to solve problems, that's a big win. But many of us have other passions that drive us, passions that link with our core. You may enjoy traveling, you may enjoy things like painting, you may have a creative mindset. And it's important to identify these passions and be aligned with them. Now, people always tell you, do what you love and love what you do. We tend to think that these two things are the same thing. And that may not necessarily be the case. For instance, if you do what you love, if you love painting, that's what you would do. But the average person has to sustain a living. They have to earn an income. We find ourselves in circumstances. So I tend to believe in loving what you do. That's tailoring your environment to your passion. So if you have, for instance, a creative mindset, if you love painting, maybe look at development in the design aspect, user interface design, that type of development. If you like fitness, maybe look at the fitness industry and build apps in that aspect. You can also use your remuneration and the product of your work to fuel your passions. So using your money to fuel passions in your life. We also have the consideration now of work and life balance. And as of last year, more than 50% of South Africans have said they prefer working in a remote capability. Now I think software developers are primed and positioned to thrive in this environment. Many software developers say they enjoy the benefits of less commuting, better concentration. And if you think about it, software developers are often the early adopters of new technological tools and new capabilities like pair programming tools, software development tools, project management tools, or remote collaboration tools. All those type of tools, I think software developers, as they are tech savvy, they tend to pick it up. So there are benefits working in a remote capability, and it's positioned well for a software developer, and it can add to your passion. So we talked a bit about passions. Next question you want to ask is, what are you good at? And this has to do with your skills, your traits, and your abilities. Now, we all have different thought patterns, the way we think. We have traits, we have competencies. Some of you are big picture thinkers. You like connecting the dots. You like seeing the relations between systems. I tend to like relating concepts and seeing the link between ideas. But others are more detail-oriented. And for a software developer, you want a bit of both. You want the big picture, but you want a detailed view. And depending where you vary on the scale, that may position you for certain environments. For instance, if you're more detail-oriented, you may work in troubleshooting more, testing, intensive environments with less risk tolerance. If you're a big picture thinker, you may want to delve into something like solution architecture, systems thinking. So the way you think can help define your passion and also help define your environment. Some of us are introverts, some of us are extroverts, we have certain personalities. And if you're an introvert, you may prefer a small team. If you're an extrovert, you may like working with people, and you may veer into other transitional roles, like a Scrum Master, for instance. So our personalities and our traits help define our environments and help define the way we work. Some of us like structure. Some of us like trying out new technology. So that also helps swing the type of teams and type of companies we work for. Now, in our modern day, there's this drive towards an agile network company. So that's a company that's firm, flat, fast, and in this way, it makes it disruptive. Decisions are made quicker. And as network, they're giving more ownership to individuals to make decisions. So we see these days, people are talking about being full stack developers. We're talking about having cross-functional skills, domain skills, analysis skills, development skills. So it's important to think of yourself as positioning yourself for positions that thrive in this type of agile network corporations, since that's a trend of companies and that's the way that they are going. So we're looking at this extreme outlier, someone who has a broad base of competencies, a broad base of skills, and that's what you want to position and build yourself for. So we're just going to look a bit at that. So we typically think there's a job title, it's a job role, you have a role of a software developer, you have your day-to-day tasks like troubleshooting, development, maintenance of software, testing software, and that's a role that you do in your day-to-day work. And then you have these competencies. So those are the skills. It's basically a combination of skills, behaviors, traits, and they define how you do your work, how efficient you're going to be in your work. And they're pretty broad. They can be applied across a lot of subtle, nuanced skills. And then we have the nuanced skills at the bottom. So it can be your C# programming capability, can be your ability to script on an operating system. It's very specific, it's very nuanced. We tend to think that skills are neatly packaged into competencies and are neatly packaged into job roles. But in actual fact, we find in reality, skills often don't meet the job title. Job titles may be the same in different companies and in different industries, and the skills may differ. And skills may evolve over time for that same job position, may even evolve in the interview process as interviewers find new candidates and adjust the skills needed for the role. So in this day and age, there's often a misalignment between skills and job title. So we see a reality that's more like this. You see skills in a job role, we see gaps for the job role, and we see skills outside of the job role that may support the actual skills required for the role. So, for instance, you may have C# development skills required for the job role, but you may have technical skills that haven't been asked for, like C++ skills that may transition well into the skills required for the job. There may be some transferable technical skills. There may also be support skills. You may understand Agile. You may have some leadership skills that will make you more effective in that job. So the reality is skills often don't align with job roles. They're missing skills, and there's skills outside of the role that may help you perform well in that position and opportunity. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at transferable skills, and we're going to look at how you can leverage those skills and position yourself well for an adaptive market. So let's take a business intelligence developer, and let's call him Jacob. Now, in our modern day in agile corporations, often the best performers are what we call T-shaped individuals and M-shaped individuals. The individuals with a set of deep expertise and a broad base of competencies. Those broad-based skills, those soft skills, and those skills like paradigms that can be applied on top of your technical skills. So that makes them effective in a cross-collaboration team. So Jacob, our business intelligence developer, he's a T-shaped individual, and he has about 13 years of software development or business intelligence development experience. So he's built up deep expertise in things like we see here in the base of that T, system skills like C#, SQL Server, SQL, OLAP, and ETL, etc. So he's built that over time. Very specific skills, very nuanced, and very critical to the role that he performs within his team. And at the top of the T, on that bar, you see teamwork, communication, leadership, project management, and agile. And these things can be applied across skills. Even if he picks up new skills, these broad-based competencies can be applied. And that allows him to be effective in a team And this is the glue for him to be an effective collaborator in an agile team. He has broad system skills that can be applied across some of these nuanced skills and broad discipline skills. So this is a T-shaped individual. And it's one way you can build up your skill set. It's one way you can leverage your skill set to make yourself marketable in an agile environment. Now, this is a data visualization developer, and let's call her Sarah. Now, Sarah's a bit different. She's got about 7 years of experience, and she's what we call an M-shaped individual. She's gone from project to project. After varsity, she did some analysis, she did some research, and she picked up some data analysis skills. So that was one domain that she picked up. And then she went into web development. She was looking at the market and trying out new projects, did some UI design, looked at things like D3.js, JavaScript, and HTML. And then later she went into a data-driven role and landed up in a BI development role, looking at SQL, C#, Python, etc. So she's got broad domain experience, and that's a lightweight and less deep than our T-shaped individual. So her base crosses many domains, and that makes her become a data visualization developer. You also see on the top there her competencies. So it's more lightweight skills, and she's actually transferring the skills into the data visualization developer role, using some design capabilities, using her understanding of analysis, and using her understanding of development. And in an agile team, she's flexible for non-expert tasks, since her expertise is more lightweight. She can take up items on the backlog, and she can meet them based upon her experience level. So this is one way to make yourself more marketable, especially if you have diverse skill sets, and especially if you've gone across different domains in your tenure and experience. So we've looked at building up a skills portfolio, building up a T-shaped portfolio and an M-shaped portfolio. I'll look later at a bit more at leveraging this to actually meet gaps in the market. So now we're going to look at what you get paid for. And this is an essential question, because you want a career that's sustainable, a software development career that you can build on and live on. So I've looked at the top skills according to the Business Tech for 2022. And across all these skills, I think software development can directly influence the role, can be directly be used in the role, or it may be a support function to help that skill. For instance, if we take the management consulting domain, if we look at data analytics, data engineering, data science, solution architecture, and data visualization, software development can be used across all those roles. And similarly, across each of these domains, many of these job roles can use software development. It plays a large influential part in supporting these roles. So it's very transferable, and it's very effective in supporting skills. Now, this is a diagram by Free Code Camp, and it's a very interesting diagram. It shows how flexible a software development career is. Now, we all know that software forms the backbone of companies. It forms the backbone of operations, and it's important in delivering information and supporting business services. So it's not surprising that many roles in an organization speak in terms of what software developers are familiar with. So for instance, your project manager may talk about software development life cycles. Your business analyst may dive deep using SQL and Python to find out information to support their analysis. And with cloud deliveries, people are increasingly using cloud cost models to make decisions. So understanding software development provides you with those nuts and bolts that can transition you into many roles. So for instance, if you are a software developer, you want to be less people-focused, you want to work maybe in a remote capability and not be bothered, you can look at being a data engineer or even a database administrator role. If you want a team-based role, if you've got soft skills or we've built soft skills over time, you may want to look at being a Scrum Master, using your servant leadership skills to support your fellow software developers. You might just pursue a software development role in itself. And if you have good people and business skills, maybe even start your own company. So it's something that's very transferable, and it's something that's very sustainable for a long-term career. So if you looked at what you get paid for, now let's look at what the world needs. So we're going to look at how you can adapt to the needs of the market. So I've taken the top languages over the year as defined by the GitHub state of the Octaverse. So this, if you're not familiar with GitHub, GitHub's an online repository where you can share your code, version your code, and interact with a community. But the beauty is that they collect the statistics and the data on the amount of developers they have in various languages and the popularity of these languages. So you can pick up interesting trends with languages, and that kind of feeds into tech trends. For instance, we can see JavaScript that's solid at number 1. And that makes sense to a degree. JavaScript's easy to learn. It's very influential in the mobile and the web space. We also see Python at number 2 in 2021. And it's gone from number 4 in 2014 to number 2 in 2021. So that's an indication of the increase in data-driven applications. The interesting thing to see as well is the relevance of Java. It's an effective language, fast, scalable, platform independent, and we still see its relevance today. And surprisingly, C++ and C, for decades, it's been used, but it's still in the top 10 chart today. So it's the C and C++ play a part in applications that require fast speed, especially gaming apps, academia apps, and you can think about small applications on the sensors in your headphone that requires something very fast and efficient. So these are the trends in languages, and it's kind of an indication of trends in tech. So what I've done is I've taken this state of the Octaverse hierarchy of languages, and I've built a tree to show the relations between the languages and to show how you can transfer skills potentially. So we see C solid at number 9, and we see C++ solid at number 7. And these languages came about in the 70s. They're very close to machine code, and for that reason, they're very fast. But they are low-level languages. They take some skills to understand and develop. C++ has a bit of an object-oriented flavor, so it has some benefits. Number 8 is shell scripting. It's neither a low-level, high-level language. It's a command line interpreter, but used across many operating systems, and solid at number 8, still applicable today. And then we had Java, which came about in the 90s. And this was a high-level language, influenced by C++, easier to learn. And like C and C++, it falls in the bracket of a procedural language, following step-by-step instructions. So we had this language now, Java, which was platform independent, but easier to learn, and it became very popular, and it's still popular today. And this was released by Sun Systems. And in response, Microsoft came up with C#, very similar, powerful, and also a procedural language. On the left here, we have languages loosely influenced by C++. We have solid at number 1, JavaScript, at number 2, Python, and at number 4, TypeScript. And you can see that TypeScript is influenced by JavaScript, but it's also easier to script and in some degrees scalable. And these languages on the left, they are scripting languages using day-to-day tasks, and they pretty much run at runtime. So we see this families of languages, and it also gives us an indication of transferable skills. For instance, if someone understands C++, it may be much easier to learn Java, which is a higher level language and shields you from understanding things or shields you from maintaining things such as memory management. Similarly, if you understand JavaScript, it may be much more easier to learn TypeScript. We also get an idea of families of languages, scripting languages on the left, procedural languages on the right, and procedural languages pretty much used for scalable software. And in our modern day, we also have functional languages like Scala, Clojure, and Kotlin. And these are based on the computer solving some equations, and it's highly effective for calculations and machine learning driven solutions. So these are a new family of languages and emerging languages. So you may also want to focus and think about those. So a tree like this helps you see the transferability of skills. We can see some trends in languages, and we can even see the influence of tech companies on languages themselves. So we've looked a bit at transferable skills in languages, but I mean, what if you want to adapt to the market needs? I'm sure all of you use LinkedIn. You all have your LinkedIn profile. I'd be worried if you are not using LinkedIn. It's a very powerful tool to network and market yourself. So you typically have a membership, you typically have a job role, and you typically have a skill set and referrals by people. And your skill set, the skills you find on LinkedIn, they're pretty much very unique. Now, the beautiful thing is that on the back end, LinkedIn has a skills taxonomy. And the skills taxonomy they have is on the back end. You don't really see it. It's an engine that works out the relationship between skills and jobs based upon all the data gathered from the members, from the skills listed, and from the job titles listed. So they're driving data on the background, doing some analytics, and building up the skills taxonomy. For instance, if you look at the web developer in that square, somewhere close to the middle, you can see some skills closely related, like wireframing, ActionScript, iPhone, Firefox, PHP, and HTML scripting. So these are closely related to the web developer, and they've calculated that. But the beauty is we can tap into this repository. We can interact with it and we can use it still in beta mode, but we can use it to look at skills gap and potential opportunities. So if you search for Career Explorer, if you go, just Google it, LinkedIn Career Explorer, and look for this tool on Google, you'd come to this tool and this facility. So it's an interface to interact with LinkedIn's skills taxonomy, that powerful engine on the back end. And Microsoft is also partnering with LinkedIn, so we can see exciting developments in that space. So some of the developers here think about APIs and connecting to that repository, but more about that later. So let's look at Jacob, and he's entered that he is a business intelligence developer, and he wants to look at gaps in the market. And the beautiful thing about this, and the beautiful thing about this approach is it's looking at opportunities, giving you multiple opportunities based upon the transitions that people have historically made from a business intelligence developer role. And that's based on LinkedIn data. So he sees there's a business intelligence consultant match of 91%. He thinks maybe I can consider that. Business intelligence specialist, SQL developer. But he goes down and he's interested in, he looking for something that interests him, and he finds a business intelligence engineer. And one thing you can notice is he's got some skills overlap. He's got some skills in common. He's got his business intelligence skills. He's got his data skills. He's got those SQL skills. And that's typically with handling structured data, information that's structured in a sense that, like your Excel spreadsheet, it makes sense, it's intuitive, you can see the rows and columns. But he sees some gaps as well. He sees there are some skills that I have to build. There's some skills I don't have. Things like Python, Amazon Web Services, Hadoop, and Hive. So those are skills gaps. And this tool gives those gaps and highlights it for him. So he's going to have to look at ways of building these skills. And these are typically linked to things like big data and using unstructured information. So think about sentiment data or data that has a free flow form, things like text documents, machine code, or information from RFIDs, tags, for instance. So he's going to have to meet those skills if he wants to become a business intelligence engineer. I'm just going to show you how you can do that as well. So he's got skills gap. He has some skills that meets the role, and he's got gaps where he doesn't meet the role. And he's going to look at those strengths, he's going to look at those weaknesses, and he's going to position himself for opportunity. So that's the idea. He wants to create opportunity, not just look at opportunities in the market. Now, if you want to look at creating opportunities, you can think of an example of the Apple iPhone. So if any of you remember the original Apple iPhone, when it came out, and before the Apple iPhone, everybody was using these phones with these plastic buttons, the clunky buttons where it was uncomfortable, it was sticky, and you had this small screen where you had to squint to see the text you were typing. But then Apple made a bold move. They released this iPhone. It had a big screen. It had a multi-touch interface. It had the ability to make the call by swiping on the screen. And it had this nice high-definition camera. So that was the iPhone. It wasn't something the market asked for, but it was something that Apple imposed on the market. It's something they had a thought process behind it. They had a thought process that was intuitive. And the market accepted it because it made sense. But could you similarly have a thought process that's intuitive and create opportunity that makes sense for the market? And that's what we're going to look at. It's called mental model innovation. And the first step you would do, I'm sure each of you have been exposed to SWOT. We've looked at self-assessment, understanding some of the skills you have. We've looked at some of the weaknesses, for instance, that Jacob had for opportunities. But it also opportunities, some value add, some skills that may support your role and some skills that may help you transition into that role. And there are also threats to your position in the market. We're going to look at that, but we're going to look at also at how to take that and create the opportunity and to work with each of these elements to leverage the opportunities. So Jacob's a business intelligence developer. He's got significant experience. He's got very specialized experience for that role. We saw that he had skills for the business intelligence developer role. He's got that SQL Server experience. He's got SQL exposure. He's got some C# and Python. He's been using that in his role. But then he's got some gaps. The Python, the AWS, Hadoop, and Hive. Specifically, the big data skills he doesn't have, and the skills of working with unstructured data and in a cloud environment. And he's working on that. So he's listed his strengths. Typically, like you would do in a SWOT, he's listed his strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So his strengths, we see he's got those specific skills: data warehouse design, SQL, Python, ETL, Linux. He's got domain knowledge, so he's got good knowledge in insurance and credit risk. So he's focused on those industries. He's got systems thinking. He's built leadership capability in his team. He mentors some of his team members. He's got good communication skills, and he's good at building scalable solutions. His weaknesses. So we've noticed he has gaps in some languages and some platforms. So Apache Spark, Hive, Cloud, data engineering, those are his gaps. There are also opportunities. Now, he's worked in a database environment for a long time. So he's got some database management skills. He's got some project management skills. He's done some courses. He understands from dealing on projects for a long time. He's got some DevOps exposure, and he's got some languages that are not necessarily asked for, like C# and Java. So those are opportunities that are not necessarily listed, but they may provide some value add to the role. And then there are threats to his position. The market has increased remote competition and he's competing on a global scale. So he's listed his strengths, his weaknesses, his opportunities and threats. But we have to take the self-assessment and we have to look at the next steps. How does he take that view of himself and how does he build those next steps? How does he create that opportunity from his self-assessment and self-awareness? And it takes a bit of insight, it takes a bit of gray matter, but if you want to go to that next step, you have to think a bit. So he looks at what they would call combining his strengths to maximize his opportunities. So the whole approach is controlling what you can, your strengths and your weaknesses, leveraging your strengths and minimizing your weaknesses. So you've built a self-assessment, you understand what your strengths and weaknesses are, but if you can control them, you can maximize opportunities and you can minimize your threats. You can work against the forces against you and leverage the opportunities. So he looks at how his strengths can maximize opportunities. And he knows he's got solid leadership. So he could lead the team. So that's his strength. Lead on project approaches and lead on database management approaches. And that's a way he can provide what I call value add, leveraging his strengths for those opportunities. So that's value add. It's not necessarily asked for, but it can provide value add for the role and augment the skills in his job. Now, those languages he doesn't have experience in. Well, the first obvious thing to do, I call this segment skills transfer. He's lowering those weaknesses, the languages he doesn't understand, to provide opportunity for himself. The first obvious thing he'd do is attend boot camps, maybe get some mentorship for the language, try to learn it himself. That's the obvious thing. But then he's got exposure to things like C# and Java, and he understands SQL. And those are actually transferable to some of those tools and some of those languages. Some Apache Spark scripts can use SQL and can call Java modules. You can utilize some C# in data engineering, and Hive he knows is similar to SQL in scripting. So he can use some of those transferable skills and leverage those to minimize his weaknesses. So that's creating some opportunity for himself. And similarly, uses his strengths to lower his threats. He's good at leadership, good at communication. That's going to make him more effective in a remote team. He can act as the glue. He can act as the glue with a disparate team, where communication is vitally important and where his skills and understanding would help act as a glue between those remote teams and between those disparate teams. And then he's listed some additional alternative plans to minimize weaknesses and threats. And those are not related to strengths and weaknesses, but just a list of ideas he has. He calls those minimize weaknesses and threats. So this is a thought process. This is a thought pattern. It's a way that he looks at his internal capabilities and leverages that to create opportunity and to provide that value add for something he may spot or something in the future in the market he may be looking at. And this is a thought pattern for Jacob to be like an Apple iPhone and impact the market. So we looked at what you are good at. We looked at your skills. We looked at your traits. We looked at your competencies. And we looked at how you can build up those blocks to be what we call digitally dexterous. We looked at what you like. That's your passion. And we looked at your traits and your thought pattern and what you are applying for in the environments that you'll probably be better suited for. We looked at what the world needs, and that's being adaptive to the world and their needs, and also creating opportunity for yourself. Looked at some data-driven ways with LinkedIn, but we also looked at market trends, language trends, and ways to position yourself for the market. And we looked at software development. whether it's a lucrative career. And we looked at how transferable it is and how in its own right, it's a backbone for corporations and the backbone for many opportunities. Now, each of you may look at all of these aspects, place different emphasis on each one, and have your own formula for the combination for each of these. But your combination of these will be your future fit version of yourself. It'll be how you assess yourself. It'll be how you prepare yourself for the market, and it'll be how you would set the market to your terms. Some of us may be focused more on passion. Some of us may be focused more on honing our skills. Some of us may be focused on a lucrative career, and some of us may be focused on learning the latest tech and technology. That's your formula for being future fit. So for those of you that are new to software development, it's an exciting space. I can see a lot of potential in the future, and I can see the long-term need for scalable software. For those of you transitioning, it's a good space to come into, it's a good space to build your skills, and it's a good space for you to be applicable in many domains. So we've learned how to adapt to the market. We've learned how you build your skills and traits. We've learned how to adapt to an uncertain market and set your own terms. And this is what it means to be future fit. And with all the changes in the market, with all these changes in tech trends, I hope that one day and in the future, maybe being future fit can be whatever you want it to be. Thank you very much for attending my talk, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And I'm going to open this floor now to questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lyle, for that presentation. I think, Lyle, if you would just drop the presentation share at the moment, that way folks get to see you in full on screen, yeah?
Is it off?
Still seeing the screen at the moment. Just while Lyle's busy with that, I will remind folks that are participating today, just please raise your questions in the chat window, and we'll pick up your questions from there and then answer all that we can today. Perhaps just some commentary to, there we go, Lyle. Just some commentary to what Lyle shared today in terms of the framework, that it's a great context for you to consider your career in terms of software development and understanding that it is a journey. With as rapid moving as technology is, you are going to need to reinvent yourself multiple times within a software development career. I just perhaps want to take us back to one of the words that we used, the jumpstart side. And Johan in our audience asked the question in terms of what he could do to skill himself up in terms of starting. And I'll kind of talk to it first from DVT's perspective, and Lyle, then I'll hand it across to you to share as well. So Johan, and for anyone else on the call that's at that point where you're looking to start your career, there are a couple of things that Lyle mentioned that I really would say pay attention to. The value of your profile and the relevance of your profile on LinkedIn is how people are going to find you. That's most certainly something you should spend time investing in, and try to ensure that you're showing the skills that you have, certifications that you have, and importantly, any experience that you have. And that's where the conundrum comes up for folks entering software development. Inevitably, organizations that are hiring are looking for people with experience. At the same time, you may be sitting in a situation where you're looking for your first job opportunity that is going to give you the career experience that you're looking for. The way to try and work around that initial barrier is undertake practical projects and add them into your own portfolio that you can then point people at to go, this is work that I've done. It doesn't necessarily have to be for a company, but take on challenges, to Lyle's point, that you find interesting. Build in the app, create a mobile application, do the work in that space so that you've done something practical that you can show folks as demonstrable evidence of your skills in a particular technology space. I can tell you that from a recruitment point of view in an organization like DVT, There are many more factors than simply your resume that we look at. We look for people that are showing innovation. We look for people that show agility in their approach to things. We look for people that are problem solvers. And one of the problems that people new to the software development career space face is that it's difficult to get your first opportunity in order to gain the experience. So do whatever you can to amass evidence that gives people the comfort level to go, not only have you done a course or a degree or a certification in a space, but you've applied it and you've tried it and you've worked through the problems and challenges that developers face in terms of building out applications and software development. Lyle, perhaps there's more commentary from you around that to kind of go, it's one thing to understand being flexible and future fit for your career, but right at the start of things, what is it that you can focus on that will help you get that first opportunity?
Okay, so right at the start is the one thing you can leverage is if you've studied, you've done a practical project, you've worked with a company, you've built a project for themselves. So you've built skills there, try and leverage that as far as possible. That's one thing I did. Another thing is don't underestimate the power of volunteering for projects. And you have things like GitHub as well. You go on that repository, you work on hackathons. If you have a passion, you can pick up these languages very quickly and you can try and build something that's tangible. Think of something that's practical and something that provides an immediate value so that you can actually build up a portfolio of projects that you can actually publish and showcase. These days, interviewers and hiring managers, they're open to you showing something you've developed. Walk them through it, walk them through the code, walk them through the thought process, the output. So you have that opportunity using now these things like Docker, GitHub, these online repositories, and they have communities around it. So the world is very much geared for that. And there's nothing that stops you from being involved in these kind of projects. So do online courses and boot camps. And the next step is actually take on maybe projects in repositories, build your own thing. Don't be scared of doing it. And then the other thing is there are things like hackathons and competitions. Try your hand at a hackathon. Even if you don't succeed, you're actually learning the skills and solving the problem that you want. So there are many platforms for that. I know in the data space, they have Kaggle, KD Nuggets. They constantly have competitions where you can do SQL, Python, and build things. It's very exciting. Yeah.
100%. And that is probably a really good one for folks to take a note of, Lyle, is hackathons. Hackathons are great recruitment tools for companies that are looking for skills and talent. And your participation in there is going to give you an idea of the types of problems and challenges that companies are going to pose to people that are looking at opportunities with them. So definitely look out for those. And to Lyle's point, look at those as opportunities to gain experience if you're new to the space. And as you progress from one hackathon to the next, you'll become part of teams that kind of go into this thing, and you'll learn from both the team participation as well as the actual technical development work. And then the second part that Lyle was talking about there, participation in open source projects. Inevitably, in those open source projects, there are some really experienced senior people that are involved in those projects, and you'll learn a great deal from them. And even if you just take on a small support role in terms of the team, there's a great deal to be gained by just doing that in terms of the work that is done. Just checking to see if we've got any other questions coming through.
I just want to add to that. If you're in a job role and maybe you want to upskill yourself, there's a thing called pet projects. You can spend 1 or 2 hours a week if you can motivate. That's also about tailoring your environment to suit your need. And that's between what the world needs and what you actually enjoy. Try and motivate for a pet project. Maybe something that adds value to your immediate work environment. It can be a new technology, a new skill. So you're not wasting their time. I mean, companies understand the 2080 principle. A few things can add big value add to the environment. So think about a little project you can do in your spare time at work, build something, create something, and market it within your environment. It can be a new skill also, and then you stay digitally dexterous. That's one way that one thing I did especially to stay up to date with new languages and new skills. It works very well.
Absolutely. There's a question there, Lyle. How do I start contributing to an open source project? What do I have to do?
So what you do is you'd go to something like GitHub, go to the repository, and they'd have projects listed that you can contribute to. And they'd have what they call hackathons, certain set times, that have a cycle and certain agreements on when they want to deliver things. So you can easily just participate. And maybe if you just want to learn, just communicate with the individuals involved and pick up what you need. There's also communities within Cape Town as well, hackathon groups with different languages. You'll have a SQL group where people meet, discuss on weekends, a Python group in the different cities where people collaborate and meet and they talk about projects and collaboration. So there's also social settings to get you that starting point. So look out for those. Yeah.
Yeah, there's meetups.com. Have a look at those. There are effectively groups that I was talking about that meet in the different cities that actually discuss different topics in technologies or programming languages. Being part of those groups can get you connected to people that have significant experience. And again, those are the type of people that might connect you with an opportunity or get you into a project that you could then gain further experience in. And again, evidence of your capability in terms of doing that. So certainly look for meetups, look for those social interaction. Also look for the digital hubs that are being created. I know that there's certainly one in Cape Town, there's in Johannesburg as well, where there are incubators that are there to actually support projects, and quite often community projects that get undertaken, supported from a financial point of view, and folks participate in that and donate their time and become participants in that development work. And again, it all goes to your resume and your portfolio of actual work that you've been involved in and work that you've done. Every single time you participate in a project, you're gaining experience. That's something that you need to reflect on your resume. And that's something that counts when organizations are evaluating your fit for the type of work that they do. On that front, again, I'd kind of go look for the companies that you might be interested in joining or where you think there might be opportunities. Find them on LinkedIn and follow those organizations. You'll see that most organizations will post job opportunities on their LinkedIn feeds. That's a good starting point for you to see the opportunities that are available. And again, make sure that your profile is updated, reflects the skills that you have, because that is how the recruiters in the organizations that are posting those jobs are going to find you. References that you have from people that have worked with you or participated with you, those add to the depth of your profile. And again, the evidentiary pieces that you can add in the way of project participation, your GitHub repository and portfolio of work that you've done, samples of that, those all flesh out the resume that you can be submitting and that will be found by recruiters on LinkedIn to actually get you those first chances or those first opportunities in software development. Sorry, just the other note that I probably wanted to throw in there, to Lyle's point and the nature of the changing requirement on developers in software, is that you'll find that in many of the major platforms these days, the likes of Azure, AWS, and Google's cloud platform, there are so many tools and capabilities that are brought in as part of the platforms themselves that many people aren't aware of. So for example, if you were challenged with how long would it take you to build a frequently asked questions bot, you might not be aware that there is simple configuration activity that you can do in Azure to build that bot in the matter of minutes. You simply bring in the textual questions and answers, you import it through a process in that, you launch the bot, and it's ready to go. No development, nothing at all. And you've created an online bot that will interact with people. When they pose certain questions, it's answered by the bot based on the FAQs that have been brought in on that configuration. And nowadays, that's an example of what's required of software developers. Not only do you need the low-level coding skills to actually build things from the very base up and then work with implemented systems, but you need awareness of the capabilities and the platforms themselves so that you can leverage those tools and capabilities to rapidly develop solutions for businesses. Sometimes that doesn't mean any coding at all, but it does mean an understanding, to Lyle's point, from a software development point of view of the capabilities that are available in different technology stacks, how you can leverage those, and what the limitations are on those capabilities. Because it's then your coding capability that adds to the customization or the enhancement of those solutions. Rapidly build out the first part, then bring in your coding skills to actually enhance or customize the work that needs to follow on from that. Sorry, Lyle, I get really excited about the prospects for folks that are interested in this space, and then the chance to actually help out and point them in the right directions so that they might join organizations like DVT. It's always an exciting thing. All right, if there aren't any other questions from anybody, one new one, just from Jade. Oh, Jade, you're welcome. I think we're at that point where Lyle, I don't see anything further there. I'm just going to get to the point of going. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Lyle, thank you, as always, for making the time available to talk to the audience that did join us today. We really appreciate you sharing your insights and some of the advice that has been given here. For anybody that is on the call today, if you do have further questions, please do reach out to us either through our website or through any of the contact details that have been shared on the invite. There will be a recording of the session made available to you as well. And again, thank you for your time. Do join us again for our next Insight session, which will be available in the next few weeks. Thank you, Lyle.
Thanks, guys. Thank you very much for attending. Thanks, guys.
Have a great day, everybody.